I'm Kevin Morgan, NRCS. We're going to look at the first question on the land use and management test form. In order to classify the land, the first thing you need to do is find out the grade of the land. We're going to give you the rise and the run in order for you to determine the grade. But I'm going to demonstrate here how you could use a kilometer to determine the grade of the land. You look down there, is Christy. We've marked off 100 feet, and what I'm using here is the kilometer. I hold it up, I keep both eyes open. I look down there and I put basically where I am on the white flag and spot out where it is on that white flag, and the one by Christy, and I measure out the grade. Now, when we did this, we're going to give you a rise of 9 feet and a run of 100 feet. And that's how you can determine using this simple principle on what the grade of the land is. All right, we are here on, what is this, Ken Mart's farm? You want to introduce the farm?
Yes, so this is the farm of Ken Martz and family. We're located on Delville Road out here in Duncannon. And Ken Martz has always graciously allowed us to come out here and do our land judging competition. We're on a 4-year rotating schedule, just so each year of school, the students get to go out and experience a new farm and different types of soil, because there are several different experiences and demonstrations that we can do throughout Perry County. So they're not all created equal. So this is a big thank you to Ken Martz for hosting us today.
Okay. I'm Kevin Morgan, Natural Resource Conservation Service, otherwise known as the NRCS.
And I'm Christy Smith, Watershed Specialist for the Perry County Conservation District and Environmental Educator.
Yeah. And typically this land judging thing would be a live event, but due to adverse circumstances, we are out here presenting this today. I've done this a few years now. Basically, you're going to get a few different types of, the test form and your answer test sheet. And I typically tell the students this is kind of like a choose your own adventure, except instead of you making the determinations, you're going to allow the characteristics of the land and the soil help you lead you down this adventure. Okay? And it's pretty straightforward. You just need to pay attention to details as you're going along. Okay? So we already talked about the first question. In order to evaluate this, you're trying to get to the end determination of your classification of your land, which is located on the land class chart right here. Okay? And from that, by using some of the preliminary answers, it'll lead you to this, which will help you answer questions later on conservation practices that could take place, and the best intended land use for that classification of land.
And also environmentally sensitive areas, such as things that are susceptible to erosion, wetland delineation, modeling, which happens where the soil profile meets the water table, things like that.
Okay, so we've already gone over how to calculate out the slope of the land, and once you determine your grade of slope, that will give you the first land class that they want you to go to. So once you go to there, the next thing is surface stoneness. Okay, and when you're looking at the surface stoneness, you're looking for the percentage of stones located on the surface. The answer choices are pretty self-explanatory. Slight, severe, very severe, and they give you a percentage. Now, you'll read on the test here that it'll say that you're looking for, rock fragments within a certain plot of land. Use your best judgment on how you want to do it. I've actually taken out my cell phone and use that as the area that I'm kind of gauging the area. But you want a uniform idea. Don't go to one area that has a lot of stones and you look over across the whole area and there's not a whole lot of stones. So you want a general representation of the whole field. All right, so once you answer that, you'll see that depending on your answer, it'll lead you to reducing the land class or remaining the same. So once you've done that, you're good. Okay?
So here, I would give this particular pit a slight.
Yes,
Stoniness
very slight.
rating.
There is not a whole lot of stones here located on the surface. And if you look here, it says not enough stones to interfere with tillage, so you're not going to declassify or lower the classification.
Right.
Okay.
But fun fact, so Ken Martz is one of our all-star no-till farmers in the county. So everything that he does is very best management practice worthy. So that's why things look the way they do. You can see the amount of residue and the dark color of this soil indicating that it's very high in organic matter.
Yep. Lots of carbon. Lots of carbon. Okay. So the next question, once you've determined the soil surface stoneness, you're going to soil texture. Now this takes a little bit more finagling in order to determine that. You want to take from the surface of the soil, typically what we refer to as the O horizon or the organic horizon.
Yes.
So we're looking at the top 6 inches. Now sometimes you're going to notice that maybe that you should see a distinct color change. Now this is a pretty uniform color throughout the whole horizon, but you're going to have to sometimes see a distinct color change from 6 inches, 4 inches, depending on the amount of organic matter topsoil that you have, and down. Then and that'll help you determine where to take your sample from. Best rule of thumb: just take it from the surface. So, now, when they dig these pits, sometimes some people have a tendency to go straight over here and start pulling it. Well, they've dug, the surface soil is at the bottom, so you don't want to go that. Take your sample from the actual pit. Okay. So then you'll see here we have a flow chart. I think it's this one.
Let's talk about the
the main
soil
principle.
particles.
Yeah, take it away, Christy.
Okay, so soil particles and soil types. There's a lot of things that can happen within profiles, especially when the land is being worked or no-tilled or used for production. There are slight changes over time, but in order to understand what we're feeling for when we texture soil is the different particles that are going to show up by the touch guide. So clay is the smallest soil particle. It's very flat, it's very smooth. So when you feel it to the touch, it's going to feel silky. There's not going to be any grit to it at all. Silt is in between clay and sand. It's slightly gritty, but it still maintains its silky smoothness when you texture soil, and we'll show you when we add water and go through that process. And sand is very gritty, so it's like having salt in your hand or feeling gritty salt in that particular soil grade. So if you're feeling silky smoothness, most likely clay. If there's slight grittiness, mostly silt. And if there's sand or larger sand particles or pebbles or something like really that stands out to the touch, it's sand and loam. Loam is a mixture of all of those things.
So you're going to have to get your hands dirty in order to get this. And I tell that to every year. And you know, some people want to get their hands dirty and some people don't. But so the next thing you want to do is...
We've made a career out of getting our hands dirty.
Yeah. Like little kids.
Yeah. That's great.
So, in order to determine the texture of the soil so that you can come up with the main components that Chrissy just described, you want to put some soil in your hand. And it says on here in the guide, it says 25 grams. I tell
it's like
people,
1 tablespoon.
Yeah, I tell people think about putting in something that's kind of similar to like having like a quarter worth of sand, of soil in your palm of your hand. And then you need to wet the soil. Now you don't want to. You want to kind of try to find a happy medium here. So you get it. You just kind of move it around. You're trying to break it down, using the water to kind of break it down. Okay. Making mud pies. Okay? So you move it around, and then you kind of start spreading it out. Now when you get it down to this consistency, if you think it's too wet, then you might want to start again, or you could add some more. Or if you think it's too dry, then obviously you need to add some more water. But you want to get it to where it's kind of like in this consistency. And then you want to take your finger, and kind of roll it through here, and you're going to like, how does it really feel to me? Does it feel kind of, there's a little bit of grit to it?
It's mostly smooth.
Yeah, it's mostly
And
smooth.
there's some slight grit.
It's not overly sticky. It's kind of more smooth.
Yeah.
You can even take it through your fingers and rub it through them like this, and you've made yourself a nice muddy pan.
Yeah.
So,
There you go. You work on that, and I'll go down through here. So, if it was
number 3.
slightly gritty, but neither grit nor silky smooth predominantly came through, I'd say we have some silty clay loam. And by the appearance of this soil, I think we're in the right neighborhood.
So then you'd use your answers from what you attained there to, move on to your next classification. That's the surface texture. Then you have to do the subsurface texture. Now the subsurface is obviously, we said this is the O, and then we have the A and the B. You really want to see a change in the soil's kind of appearance. Here, like I said, Mr. Marks has it seems to be a very uniform color throughout. So you just kind of want to gauge by what you know to be the O horizon, the A, the B, and as you go down. So we're going to go down here to the bottom, and we're going to pull out something. Where were we at there, Christy? What depth were we at? We're probably, let's go backwards. Let's do it like this. Yeah. So we're 2 feet down.
2 feet.
Yeah. We're going to bring this back up.
Let's demonstrate the ribbon too. This time around.
Ribbon it out?
Yep.
Okay. We probably have a little bit more clay in here now. So. Okay. You can do the same thing that we did earlier to kind of look at the texture again. But now we're going to demonstrate. I take a little bit more from my ribboning, and in the ribboning texture, you're trying to really work the soil into like a mud ball that's not too flimsy, not too thin, and you want to try to. Here, let me just demonstrate it. See if we can get something to happen.
Yeah.
Now this one you got to kind of work it in. You're going to have bigger particles of rocks, because this is a, what was it, Calvin Burks, they said? Calvin Burks, which is a shelly. Got some shell in it. So, it's pretty good. A little more water.
So this
Christy says she's my Vanna today, by the way.
Okay. Vanna White for those of you who are Wheel of Fortune fans. So the ribboning technique is how to determine what the most content of that soil is, whether it's clay, silt, or sand. And that will lead us to our next determination. So by forming a ribbon that's about the length of your thumb, which is about an inch, inch and a half.
This takes some practice to get this technique down.
Yeah.
You might not be able to do it on the first time. You want to try to pick out the larger stuff that's in here, the larger rock fragments. You're really trying to get this down to. And then what you're doing is you got it, and you're taking it between your, what's this, index finger?
Index finger.
Right, your thumb. And you're holding it and you're trying to push it out to where you think,
About an inch or so.
where, you know, you're trying to keep it together, but you don't want to like manipulate the soil. You just want to kind of see if you can push a ribbon out through through that index finger and that thumb. And as it breaks off, you'll see, okay, how much can I ribbon out? You know.
Yeah. So,
It does take a little practice, but once again, it's fun getting dirty like this.
yes. So, if the soil does not form a ribbon, that means it's mostly composed of sand, which doesn't hold its form and it falls apart very easily. So, if it does form a ribbon, does it break at less than half an inch or an inch? If that answer is yes, then you're going to be working on this side of your touch guide. If it breaks at about an inch long, it's probably in the middle. If it's way longer and you can push that ribbon out for a pretty good length, you're probably going to be working on this side of the touch guide. So,
And we can get some pretty good decent ribbons here. So,
yeah.
and it's sticky. It's a sticky feel. You want to think of, it's got more clay in it, which your subsoil should have more clay. It should have more clay. It should be more sticky.
Right. So we're either in the silty clay loam, because we did feel that grit earlier on the topsoil. And did you find any grit in your bottom of the pit sample?
Not nearly as much.
Not nearly as much. So it is very common for the topsoil to be textured, have a different textured result than the bottom of the pit down in the depth. So if you said there was hardly any grittiness, but it was still like silky smooth and sticky, we're probably looking at silty clay.
And like I said, the biggest thing you can do when you're doing this is like I said, use this to make your adventure down the soil. So do it once, do it twice. You know, you got to get in there to really figure it out. Oh boy, that is good. All right, next.
Next, depth to bedrock. So this pit that Ken Martz had dug for us up in his top field, it's about 3 feet deep.
3 feet deep.
And normally when we do our land judging events, we get to at least 3.5 feet deep, but for all intents and purposes for today, this is what we're working with. So
Depth of red rock. So how far do you go where you can't? It's really hard to dig anymore. And obviously, you're looking at the numbers here: deep, moderately deep, shallow. We're obviously having that to the bedrock here. So
it's starting to show.
greater than 40 inches. It's starting to show a little bit. I would definitely say this is probably deep. All right, and that will lead you
To internal drainage, talking about modeling.
Yeah, modeling, and that's a term. You want to talk about modeling, Kristen?
So modeling is where the water is percolating through the soil, and the elements in the soil, such as iron, which turns orange and like a bright color, it oxidizes because of the presence of water and how water moves. Water is always moving, so if there are elements in the soil and lots of rain, lots of drainage are moving through that soil, it's going to oxidize and turn that part of the profile that we're looking at like a grayish color. And so we don't see any of that here, but as part of the soil health demo video series and materials that we're creating for these lessons, I will find some modeling examples to put up there and show what it actually looks like.
now that we've moved out of the pit, we've actually gathered all the information with the characteristics of the land and the soil texture and the depth of bedrock, and we just got through talking about the modeling and the drainage within the soil. This allows us to come up with our final conclusion of what our land classification is. All right, so the next question here is basically, after you've done all your, choose your own adventure pathways?
Yeah, and texturing.
You have come up to your answer, so you mark your answer. And then the next thing is your ag land capability subclass. So you use the bottom part here for the subclasses, correct?
Yes, and those are things like erosion, wetness, whether the water table is present in the pit, modeling, and soil depth of bedrock is less than 20 inches. That's all listed out in your guide.
So then you'll be able to answer your subclasses based on the information you obtained there. The next thing would be a selection for most intensive ag land use. So once you come up with your classifications, you'll come over here and you'll see their choices for your ag land use. So then it's pretty straightforward. If you feel like you're confident in your answer there, then you get to move over to your answer here, right?
Yes. Things to choose from are continuous row crops, 50% row crops, 50% grass and legumes, or 50% row, 50% small grain or hay, 50% row and 50% hay, or 100% grass hay. And then there are other ones on the other side: pasture, recreation, woodlands, wildlife, or etc. So when you get to your land class chart, you want to go down and, based on your results, pick the best land class that is suitable for the area of the pit or wherever you're looking at.
And if you look over here, some of these answers are going to be determined based on what you determined on your subclass.
Yes, and slope is a huge part of that as well. We're not going to plant row crops on something that's above like a 15 to 25 or greater percent slope.
We're not going to do it.
We're not going to do it.
Doesn't mean that some other people might not try to do it, but okay.
The balance of this exercise is to, one, get your hands dirty, get you familiar with how land class is actually calculated and how to get the most out of your ag land, so you're making responsible choices with your farming endeavors.
Yep. Yes, definitely. So once you've done that, the last question here is, what is this? Selection of suitable conservation practice.
Otherwise known as BMPs, or best management practices.
Yes, the good old BMPs. So you'll turn to the last page here. And you'll see these listed, the land practices based on the appropriate land use. And then you should be able to make some determinations. And I tell a lot of the students every year, you need to kind of judge this based on what you determined was in the during your investigation would be the most appropriate. So diversions, which are running along the slope of the land to break up the water flowing down the land, opposed to a grass waterway that flows down the land to channel concentrated flow down there. So you need to know some of these practices and how they apply to the land before you can make the appropriate recommendation for the practice to be used. But use some common sense, right, Krista?
Yeah. So back there, we did see a lot of crop residue on the surface of the demo pit where we were. So that is definitely incorporated into that conservation practice and best management practices.
Yep. Number 10, residue management in winter cover crops. And behind us we have
a beautiful example of no-till rye. And today's date is November 5th, 2020. And so you can see that this practice is doing very well. and this is going to be Ken's cover crop for the entire winter until he gets back in the spring to put in his row crops.
So yeah, once you've been able to determine that last answers there for your practices, you're good.
Fill out your answer key and turn it in, and then there's agency staff that grade it, and a winner is determined. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Christy.